Imagine people whose names strike fear across entire countries. So powerful that they can sway government decisions, run billion-dollar businesses, and disappear whenever they want. Their names pop up in intelligence reports, on Interpol lists, and in media investigations, but often no one can touch them. These aren't characters from gangster movies. These are real people living among us. Today, I'm taking you on a trip to the dark side of our modern world. You'll meet people who combine ruthlessness, power, and intelligence, a mix that makes them admired, hated, and practically untouchable. Matteo Messina Denaro was one of the most wanted people in the world. He was a legend of the Italian mafia, a man who successfully avoided being caught for over 30 years. They called him Diabolic, after a cruel villain from an Italian comic book, and for good reason. Since the 1990s, his name brought fear to mobsters, politicians, judges, and regular people alike. When he was young, Denaro learned from Toto Riina himself, a harsh mafia boss famous for murders and bombings. Denaro quickly became known as a ruthless planner. It's said that he personally ordered the killing of witnesses, prosecutors, and police officers who tried to break up the Cosa Nostra. He was also believed to be involved in the bombings in the 1990s that killed judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, who were symbols of the fight against the mafia. For over 30 years, Matteo Messina Denaro stayed hidden. He hid in fancy houses, changed his identity, and his power reached from Sicily all the way to northern Italy. At that time, the mafia controlled almost every part of the economy: building, drug dealing, money laundering, and even politics. People said Denaro could stop big government projects or force local leaders to make decisions with just one phone call. He was finally caught in 2023 at a clinic in Palermo, where he was getting treatment under a fake name. For many Italians, his arrest meant the end of an era of mafia bosses who ruled the country from the shadows for decades. But his legend will live on for a long time, as a symbol of how deeply the mafia can get into society. Ismael El Mayo Zambada is a living legend of the Mexican underworld. For many, he's the most powerful drug lord ever, someone who survived everything: cartel wars, betrayals, his partners getting arrested, and a tough fight with the United States government. For over 50 years, he's been untouchable, even though he runs one of the world's biggest drug empires, the Sinaloa cartel. Unlike the famous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, El Mayo always worked from the shadows. He avoided cameras, didn't give interviews, and didn't try to be a celebrity. This strategy is why he's still free today. He's like a shadow, always there, but never caught. They say his last photo was taken more than a decade ago, and only a few of his closest partners know exactly where he is. Zambada controls the Sinaloa cartel, which smuggles billions of dollars worth of drugs into the United States every year. According to American authorities, he was the mastermind behind many ways to get drugs across the border, from underground tunnels to hidden compartments in cars, trucks, and planes. After El Chapo was arrested, El Mayo took full control of the organization and managed to keep its power, avoiding an internal war that destroyed many other cartels. His power doesn't just come from violence. Zambada is known for being good at making alliances. Over the years, he bought the loyalty of local politicians, corrupt military members, and police officers. Because of this, in many parts of Mexico, people say that El Mayo rules more than the president. For the authorities, he remains one of the most important targets in the world, yet it seems El Mayo is always one step ahead. His story proves that in the world of cartels, the one who survives isn't the most violent, but the one who can disappear before anyone even realizes they were there. Semion Mogilevich, the man the FBI called the most dangerous gangster in the world, is a figure straight out of mafia movies. But his power and connections are very real. Called the boss of all bosses of the Russian mafia, he built a global crime empire that for decades mixed business, politics, and finance. Born in Kiev in the 1940s, Mogilevich started small with scams and black market currency trading. But he quickly learned that the biggest money and power weren't in street crimes, but in the gray areas, where crime meets legal business. By the 1980s, he had set up his first financial networks in Central Europe. After the Soviet Union fell, he used the economic chaos to take control of key industries and arms dealing. According to American and European investigations, Mogilevich was involved in laundering billions of dollars. This money flowed through a network of fake companies, banks, and tax havens, eventually ending up in the West. What's more, his influence reached into politics. FBI reports said he had ties to oligarchs and Russian officials who used his connections and financial tricks. One of the most famous scandals he was part of was the YBM Magnex case, a company registered in Canada, supposedly making industrial equipment. In reality, it was a perfectly organized front for money laundering, through which hundreds of millions of dollars were invested and then disappeared. When investigators finally found out the truth, Mogilevich had long since left Canada. He returned to Moscow, where he still lives freely today, even though he's on the world's most wanted list. Semion Mogilevich lives a quiet life in Russia, officially as a businessman. He has never been handed over or punished. For many, he's a symbol of mafia getting away with it, a man who built a global crime empire and survived all attempts to take it down.
Dawood Ibrahim is a name that still brings fear and anger in India today. He's a guy who went from being a small-time criminal on the streets of Mumbai to one of the most powerful mob bosses in Asian history. His group, D Company, is seen as one of the most dangerous crime empires in the world. It mixes politics, money, and organized crime. Born in the 1950s in Mumbai, Dawood grew up in the poor Dongri area. Even as a teenager, he started his life of crime, from small thefts to demanding money. But he quickly figured out that real power in the city wasn't about being strong, but about controlling money, people, and information. In the 1980s, he created D Company, a group that soon took over the Mumbai underworld. Under his leadership, the mob grew into a worldwide network. It was involved in drug smuggling, arms dealing, money laundering, and controlling casinos, and even the Bollywood movie business. Indian officials say Dawood had ties to Pakistani intelligence, who used his people to cause trouble in India. One of the most shocking times in the country's history was the Mumbai bombing in 1993. A series of explosions in the city center killed over 300 people and hurt hundreds more. Indian authorities blame Dawood Ibrahim and his helpers for planning these attacks. Since then, he has been one of the most wanted people in the world, and his name is on lists from Interpol and the FBI. Even so, he has managed to stay hidden for decades. Many reports say he is hiding in Pakistan, even though that country's government denies he is there. He supposedly has a fancy house there, protected by armed guards, and lives a rich lifestyle. His money, which is thought to be billions of dollars, comes from buying properties, smuggling, and illegal money deals run by his people in Asia and the Middle East. Dawood Ibrahim is an example of a mob genius who built a global crime empire and has successfully avoided justice for decades. In India, his story is still the subject of movies, books, and legends, because in his shadow, fear and the feeling that even the most dangerous people can disappear from the world's radar still live on.
Ridouan Taghi is a name that has really shaken up Europe in recent years. He was born in Morocco but grew up in the Netherlands. Over time, he became one of the most powerful and ruthless criminals in modern Europe. Europol called him one of the most dangerous people on the continent. He brought a level of violence to the criminal world that hadn't been seen before. Taghi led the Mokro Mafia, a crime group mostly made up of people from Morocco. They controlled a huge part of the cocaine trade in Europe. Drugs coming into the ports of Rotterdam and Antwerp were the foundation of his empire. People say his group moved billions of dollars worth of drugs every year, and their reach went from South America to the Middle East. What made Taghi stand out was how ruthless he was. He didn't think twice about getting rid of anyone who got in his way. It didn't matter if it was a rival, an informer, or someone from the law. In 2019, shocking news spread around the world. Lawyer Dirk Wiersum was murdered in broad daylight in Amsterdam. He was defending a key witness in the case against Taghi. This event really shook up the whole Netherlands and showed that the mafia wasn't afraid to attack people who work in law enforcement. For years, Ridouan Taghi was like a ghost. No one knew where he was, and his connections and loyal network of informers helped him avoid the police really well. It wasn't until 2019 that he was caught in Dubai and sent back to the Netherlands. His arrest was the result of a big international operation by police who had been watching his movements and money for years. Today, Taghi is in one of the most secure prisons in Europe, but even from behind bars, he still causes fear. Authorities worry that his people might try to influence witnesses, judges, and police officers. Ridouan Taghi is a symbol of a new kind of criminal, someone who mixes violence with modern methods, cybercrime, and a global network of connections.
Dairo Antonio Úsuga, better known as Otoniel, is a name that caused fear throughout Colombia for many years. Born in a poor mountainous area called Antioquia, he joined a paramilitary group fighting against left-wing rebels when he was just a teenager. But over time, he switched sides and joined drug cartels, where his harshness and cleverness helped him quickly rise through the ranks. Otoniel was the leader of the Gulf Clan, one of the biggest and most ruthless crime groups in Latin America. His group didn't just control cocaine smuggling from Colombia to the United States and Europe, but also human trafficking, weapons, and gold routes. According to Colombian authorities, the Gulf Clan had over 1,000 armed people and a network of informants across the entire country. For Colombian forces, he was public enemy number one, the new Pablo Escobar. For over 10 years, he successfully avoided being caught, hiding in the thick jungles of northern Colombia. He changed his hiding spot every few days, used radio communication, and had protection from local communities who feared his revenge. Every attempt to catch him ended in gunfights and casualties on both sides. Otoniel was known for his harsh methods. His people killed police officers, mayors, and rivals from other cartels. At one point, he even announced a national blockade, stopping transportation and trade in many parts of the country to get back at them for the deaths of his men. In 2021, his empire fell apart. After a huge operation by the Colombian army, with over 500 soldiers involved, Otoniel was captured in the Yoruba region. The Colombian president announced that it was the biggest hit against the drug trade since Escobar was killed. Today, Dairo Antonio Úsuga is in an American prison after being sent to the United States. He's being held responsible for trafficking tons of cocaine, crimes against humanity, and hundreds of murders. But his story is more than just a tale about a criminal. It's a sign of how deeply corruption and the drug trade have gotten into the fabric of Latin America. Even though Otoniel is behind bars, many of his former people are still operating in secret, continuing the drug legacy of their leader. Even though people like Pablo Escobar and Al Capone still show up in movies and books, today's crime groups work in a totally different way. Bosses like Matteo Messina Denaro in Italy or Ismael El Mayo Zambada in Mexico show the new face of organized crime. It's more global, smarter, and uses more technology. Today's crime groups aren't just about moving drugs, forcing people to pay, or collecting protection money. They work hidden within legal businesses, putting money into real estate, stock markets, and shipping companies. They use cybercrime to clean money, hack banks, and steal private information. They control politicians, often working like a shadow behind governments, pushing their own goals into the system. These actions make this new era of bosses harder to fight. You don't see them on the streets, they don't do big, showy killings. Their power comes from a network of connections, technology, and reaching all over the world. These are people who can control whole markets, influence political choices, and stay hidden for decades. The most dangerous people in the world aren't just figures from the news or documentaries. They're individuals who operate in the shadows, controlling entire criminal empires that often stretch beyond one country's borders. They hold billions of dollars in their hands, they control gangs, cartels, and entire regions, and their decisions can cost hundreds, even thousands of lives. Even though law enforcement chases criminals and the media covers their stories, there will always be new people ready to gain power and money at any cost. This is a reminder that the criminal underworld is dynamic, unpredictable, and still present right next to us. And now I want to ask you, which of these bosses impressed you the most and why? Write your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read all your ideas. If you like this video and want more stories like it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. Every subscription really helps us make even more interesting videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care. Bye for now.